Hi, this is Dr. Cook. Before we continue with our surveys and interviews, I do want to take a few moments to talk about informed consent. So I'm going to walk you through the procedures for informed consent. I'll let you know what that is. And then what you are going to do before you actually interview anybody, you're going to write a section of informed consent, and you're going to send this to me that I can approve it beforehand. Once you have this fixed, then you will be able to conduct your surveys or your interviews. Okay, so let's look a little bit about informed consent, the history of it, what it means to participate in a study, and what is the protection for those who participate. The first thing to look at is the definition of research. And research is an investigation designed to develop or contribute to generalizable knowledge, collecting and breaking down data in the hopes of answering a question. And that's what we're doing here. You have some research questions, and you have a problem. The research, however, involves what we call human subjects. And a human subject is a living individual about whom researcher obtains data through intervention or interaction or identifiable private information. So you are going to be conducting surveys or interviews with live people. You're going to be getting data from them and possibly some private information. And so we have to be able to handle this as human subjects and in the realms of experimentation. There are federal guidelines that deal with involving human subjects, and everything at a university is approved by what we call an institutional review board. We do not have an institutional review board here at Del Tech because we are not a research institution. So for the sake of our course, I will serve as the institutional review board and be looking at your applications for research. So, what are some activities that are considered research? Well, you see on the left-hand side, and that probably isn't going to be anybody here, but on the right-hand side we have interviews, focus groups, surveys, and observations. So, anytime you do any of these activities, it is considered research. And because it's considered research, it is protected under federal guidelines. Different types of research subjects you see here. These are what we call vulnerable research subjects, and they require some special permission. College students, you see, is considered a vulnerable research subject, so we have to treat this one as with some special treatment. Children as well, prisoners, because prisoners are locked up and they can't go anywhere, so we have to be careful that they're not forced to participate in something against their will. I don't think anybody here will be interviewing or surveying children, so we should be good. So, what exactly is research protection? Well, it's the moral obligation to protect participants. It's also the obligation involves acting with concern and respect, and it involves education, certification, and accreditation. So you looked at the Belmont report, and the Belmont report talked a little bit about ethical principles, and we're going to take a moment here. Remember, the Belmont report does deal with three types things or research that protected: respect for persons, beneficence, and justice. And just to kind of review again, respect for persons, individuals should be given free choice in their decisions to participate. In other words, you can't force a person to participate in your survey. It's up to them if they want to do that. People with limited independence, children, mentally disabled, adults, older people, they're also entitled to protection. So the big thing is what we call informed consent. Participants must be given the opportunity to choose what shall and shall not happen to them to the degree that they are capable. The consent process must be informative, understandable, and clearly state that participation is a choice. So I'm going to go over in a minute some of the things that you need to have in your consent portion of the survey. You also need to address that participants will not be harmed, that the research should maximize possible benefits and minimize possible harms, and you need to talk about the assessment of risks. The nature and the range of risks and benefits must be considered. In a lot of studies, there are no risks, but you need to state that if there are no risks. Selection of participants should be fair, impartial. Participants should be all treated fairly, and the benefits and burdens should be shared fairly as well. So this just goes over a little bit about the Institutional Review Board. You should have watched the video at this point to see this, so I'm not really going to spend a lot of time reading through this. I'll give you a moment to have a look at it. You can stop the video at any time to read through this slide. In any institutional review board, as I said, Deltec doesn't have one, but most colleges and larger universities that deal with research do. And they have, their members are made up of scientists, non-scientists, different backgrounds. So there's always a chair, a vice chair, members, and consultants. All right, so how is research actually approved? So the following requirements must be met before one can approve research. You need to minimize the risk. If there are risks, they're reasonable in relation to the expected benefits. The selection of participants is fair and unbiased. And informed consent is sought and obtained from potential participants or their legal representatives. And that's very, very important, this last piece here, because that is what we're going to then build into the form, into the questionnaire that you're going to have people sign. You need to have some kind of plan in place to protect the privacy of the participants, and resources are available to monitor the data collected, and additional safeguards are provided for vulnerable populations. Okay, so here we go. What is exactly informed consent? Well, these are consent forms, basically, that people will sign before participating in any kind of study. They are written so that people can understand them. Usually they're written at about a 6th grade reading level. People should always ask questions before agreeing to be in a study. So if you are going to participate in a study, you should always ask questions. When you are conducting your surveys or interviews, people may or may not ask questions. So you want to give them as much information as possible so that they can make an informed decision. You must always include the following. You need to talk about the nature and the purpose of the research, what will go on in the study, so what's going to happen, what parts of the study are experimental, how long the study is expected to take, or how long the survey is expected to take, possible risks or discomforts, possible benefits, options that may exist besides being in the study, where you can get help if you're harmed, contact information for questions, choice to participate in the study, and your ability to leave the study at any time for any reason. So those pieces all have to be in your informed consent. And I will have posted on D2L, excuse me, an example of the informed consent letter that I had when I did my research for my dissertation. I will also put on a checklist that you can simply use as you write your informed consent piece to make sure that everything has been touched on. Remember, participation must not involve someone taking advantage of another due to the position. So you can't be someone's boss and then force them to participate. It should never be forced. Persuasion, threat, or violence should not be involved. And you really shouldn't have, keep in mind, or you should keep in mind that the participants are people's grandparents, parents, children, brothers and sisters, and friends. In other words, they're human beings, and they all deserve the respect.